Exciting times out there. And that's all in sports now. The Sunday specials start right now. And we go to Borno State, where residents of Maiduguri are now enjoying some respite from attacks carried out by Boko Haram. This relative end to hostilities was hard-fought and community-based. The Civilian Joint Task Force, set up to collaborate with the military in fighting Boko Haram, now partly takes credit for flushing Boko Haram out of Maiduguri. But the 2016 UN Secretary General report on children and conflict has brought the activities of the Civilian Joint Task Force under the spotlight. TVC senior correspondent Femi Akonde brings us this exclusive report on a closer look into the operations of the Civilian Joint Task Force.
This city once lived on the edge, but now there's a fluid movement of people all over the place. For some of them, life is back to normal. It is business as usual, and the fear that gripped them in those trying times has all but disappeared. They all have stories to tell. They are tales of terror and oppression. I'm here to meet some tough people that defended their communities when the going was rough. They are the Civilian Joint Task Force. We were introduced to Babashehu Ganiu, a top commander of this local militia. He led a revolution against Boko Haram, the public enemy #1, and pushed them out of Maiduguri. But his men relied on sheer guts, pushing against an extremist group with superior firepower, armed with just clubs and sticks. He seems to be in charge of operations. He commands respect among these men, and he demands absolute loyalty.
As we started this work, we gather all the 15 wards. All the youths agree and join us. Then we started by swearing with the Holy Book Quran. If you are a Muslim, you will swear with the Holy Book Quran. If you are a Christian, although you will swear with the Holy Bible, that you will do this work between you and your God. No teaching, no politics, no stealing, no hatred. Those are the conditions that you swear with yourself before you will join that activities. And you will swear, we will take this oath at the front of the community leaders, that is the district heads, the Lawan, the Bulamas, the religious leaders. Those are the people they will just gather and swear. You will take that oath in front of them that you will do the work between you and your God.
A United Nations Secretary General annual report on children and armed conflict indicted the Civilian Joint Task Force for recruitment and use of children in the conflict. The UN estimates that there are about 3,700 underage children as members of the Civilian Joint Task Force. Now Babashehu understands their activity has come under global scrutiny.
We agree, yes, we have the small children, we are using in the activities. That's why we say, okay, we agree that we will separate them. But we are not recruiting, but we use them in our action time. Like we use them as supporters, those who are conveying our marches, cattle losses and others. You understand? We keep some in checking points so that they will open the gate and close it. And we use some as informants when they see something very strange so that they will communicate to us. Those are the boys. But truth of the matter, we are not recruiting. When you say you recruit somebody, you will give him arm and orders. So we are not giving arm to underage children, but we use them during that our work.
Gambo Kashim is the parent of a 16-year-old boy recruited as a child into the Civilian JTF. His son, Bamai Kashim, now works with him part-time as a vulcanizer. When Bamai was 12, the Civilian Joint Task Force used him to gather local intelligence and identify Boko Haram elements in the community. I joined the civilian JTF at the peak of the killings. We are not trained as fighters. I only assist in running errands, and sometimes we help them man checkpoints. We know the Boko Haram members. We see them. I help the civilian JTF identify them. We do not like their deadly activities. Working for the civilian JTF also puts food on the table for his poor home. He collected stipends, just enough to support the family's meager income. All that is over. Now his father carries the burden of providing for the family all alone.
Things are now more difficult. The civilian JTF are very generous. When my son was working for them, he gets some financial reward. Now that he has been disengaged, we are left alone. I wish we can get more assistance, or even if my son gets a good job so that he will also take care of the family.
The ranks of the civilian JTF is filled with young people fed up with the killings, bombings and destruction wreaked by Boko Haram. They stand in defense of the vulnerable population, but defending the population has come with its costs and a price to pay. Like this man who was hit by shrapnel from a Boko Haram bomb explosion. He carries scars that will constantly remind him of that period in his lifetime.
We have removed fear from our hearts. They cannot kill us all. Someone has to stand up to these rascals. That is what we are signed on to do. We will not stand down.
Daredevil attacks by Boko Haram in the past claimed thousands of lives, injured many more, and destroyed property estimated at more than $9 billion. Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari recently told the World Economic Forum on the Middle East and North Africa that the death, damage and destruction caused by terrorist groups such as Boko Haram will take decades to recover from. The militia has not slowed down. They are out on the streets, carefully watching to identify danger in its wake. In this month of Ramadan, they are also working. At sunset, they gather for a feast to break their fast. They pray for peace and protection. Zara Mohammed, widow of a slain civilian Joint Task Force fighter, still has fond memories of the gallantry shown by her husband and others like him. Her husband's death left her with 3 children to cater for from proceeds of her tiny business.
I still think about my husband. I know he died defending the local population. People talk about his bravery, but we're now struggling to make ends meet after his death.
Zara and her family still mourn. More than 1 year after Boko Haram fighters ambushed and killed several members of the militia.
Things have not been easy. My father always brought food home. Now there's no one to give us food.
This deadly insurgency is homegrown, and the terrorists are members of the community. It was easy for the civilian JTF to identify Boko Haram fighters from among people they have lived with all their lives.
Yes, Boko Haram, they are a member of the communities. We are living in the same community. They are brothers and sisters, those that we are living in the same community. As for me, even the Muhammad Yusuf, we are very close. I will just tell you, we are in the same area. I am living in Shorinos. It's just about 20 kilometers. When you go, you will reach Muhammad Yusuf's house. Even Shekau is just our neighborhood brother.
So you know these people?
So we know them. We are in the same community. Initially, everybody took this we take it as a religion something, how they are preaching. You understand? Then later on, we just come understand what their ideology and their religions. So it's contrary.
The commander of the civilian JTF took me to the birthplace of Boko Haram in Maiduguri. He tells me how wrong messages and misinterpretations of the Holy Quran spread like wildfire, polluting the gullible minds of youth who turned violent. This whole area is where the Boko Haram ideology started. This is the railway compound, Bayan quarters in Maiduguri. I am told that this debris used to be the mosque where the founder of the Boko Haram extremist group, Mohammed Yusuf, preached and indoctrinated many vulnerable youth to join this deadly sect that ravaged the entire northeast, killing thousands of people and destroying property worth millions of dollars. Back on the streets of Maiduguri, people now feel safe to sit outside and relax, a typical feature of the northern communal lifestyle. Digma Zubeiru, patron of the militia and a prominent community leader in Maiduguri, tells me about the heroics of a loose group of people united by a common factor.
We encourage a system where these civilian JTF fighters were given incentives for helping fish out Boko Haram elements in the community. We have peace now, but this would likely have been impossible without the tremendous support of the civilian joint task force.
This is Limanti Ward in Sheuri North in Maiduguri. Residents here have returned to their homes after more than 2 years on the run. They feel safe again in a community once ravaged by the killer extremist group. This 79-year-old man shows scars from bullet wounds inflicted on him by the guns of Boko Haram. He says he is lucky to have survived the attack. This survival story resonates among thousands of residents in Maiduguri. Once upon a time, moving freely on the streets of Maiduguri was very risky. You could see fear and tension on the faces of residents then, unsure of what form an attack would take or what time an attack would occur. But residents today are glad that dark times are finally over, and there are hopes that the peace will be maintained. The local population put boots on the ground to defend their land, and today they are glad they did. For the civilian JTF, they must now carry on their self-appointed task without the recruitment and use of children, in compliance with the United Nations Action Plan to protect children in conflict. And for the kids on the streets, the newfound peace simply means they can come out to play. Femi Akonde, TVC News, Maiduguri, Borno State.